like micro DM focus. And I think when you see a team like Witness get into high pressure games, we saw it a little bit on the online games in ETF12 final, stalling out some rounds, allowing the round to reset and go back to mid-fights. But I think when we see teams like Witness, and to be honest, even teams like TF2 Easy, I think when we see these guys, particularly Witness again, in the high pressure scenarios, not only do I think Witness will find themselves in those situations, I think they may even actively seek them in some situations. I think, hypothetically, I can conceive a game plan where a structured team like Witness come in, try to focus predominantly on key fights, like mid-fights, last holds, and last pushes. Because theoretically, with a 5-minute round timer, if you can just have good last holds, reset the round consistently into mid-fights and have good mid-fights and conversions with last pushes, I mean, realistically, you could get away with doing just that. And when you're playing against a team like Froyo, who, okay, we don't know exactly how they're going to match up, but we know historically Froyo have been able to come in and, unless you're really, really on point, they've been able to come in and do a lot of damage in a quite a chaotic fashion against European teams. Potentially, if Witness can drag the game in that direction and sort of almost be able to avoid a lot of those facets and just play to their particular strengths in this area, yeah, to put a long story short, I think we're going to see a huge impact from that 5-minute round timer. And just one final point on that. We didn't really see that in RGL and other various American lands. I think predominantly because it's just not quite as much in the American playstyle DNA. But yeah, just to reiterate, I think it plays into the European theory of the game immensely.
All right, and we are aware of the sound issues, guys. Sorry about that. There are a few hiccups on day one of LAN, as you'd always expect, but we will be ironing those out as we go through the day. Everything should be fine and dandy later, I'm absolutely certain of it. And we were mentioning this 4-team group. Do you think that having a smaller group, especially one where, dare I say it, the gap between the top 3 and the 4th team in that group might make group stages a lot more important at this LAN? Those day 1 games, usually people see it as a kind of forced scrim day and you don't really mind whether you end up in the top half or the bottom half, but right now it is, if you win all these games on your day 1, you get through top seed of the group, looks very, very likely you have a pretty clear path to the winner brackets final and then getting that 2-ban advantage in our grand final.
Yeah, no, that's spot on actually, because as you say, we do have a little bit lopsided. I'm not counting SVIFT out. It's possible they can come in and do some damage. Like, you know, Samski's been added to that team compared to their online roster. There is the potential for them to do some damage, but realistically, it's a little bit of a skill gap between the top 3, which means one of those upper bracket semi-finals, barring any crazy upsets, one of those upper bracket semi-finals will be 2 of these top 3 teams playing each other, and the other one, as you quite rightly said, is most likely just going to be, at least in the team's beliefs, you know, we hold out our hopes for something better than this, but whichever team of Witness, TF2 Easy, Froyo gets to play SVIFT in the semi-finals, hypothetically, they will see that as almost a free path to the upper bracket finals, and yeah, that's a pretty good spot to be in. So I think froyotech maybe, I don't think they'll be thinking about that too much, because you know they won't, maybe Banny and Co will not know the lay of the land as much. Maybe they'll just see 3 European teams and say, right, you know, we're going to play these guys the same way we would have played any other year. But I think for Witness and TF2 Easy, knowing that they can sort of bypass potentially each other, like Notorious Vibes, but knowing they can potentially bypass each other and get straight into the upper final, yeah, I think that's definitely going to add some fuel to the group stages, because as you rightly say, we often just, I mean, I've played these group stages, and we just, okay, you don't want to lose. It looks bad if you lose, especially when you get into the international matchups. But at the end of the day, we've seen some very, very bizarre results that didn't correlate with the rest of the tournament in groups before. And okay, it feels bad when you lose, but at the end of it, you just brush it off. Maybe you were trying like a certain thing, or you didn't want to give away strats, or all these sorts of things. And yeah, I think I have a sneaking suspicion that we're maybe going to see a little bit more. I think strats will be used, let's put it that way. Strats will be used in open groups where, in a way they would not have before, for the sake of getting to that upper bracket final easier.
Yeah, so that winner's bracket final is so important for this one. You get 2 bans headed into the final, which means quite a lot in terms of the European map pool, I suppose, considering, as you mentioned earlier a little bit, neither of these teams are really happy about playing Metalworks, I don't think. It's been in the EU map pool for a while, but it's clearly much more popular among NA, so that would be nice for, you know, if TF2 Easy or Witness do make the final, to be able to take that one out of contention from the winner bracket side. But we can talk now more about all these 4 teams we have in our invite group. We can go through kind of their history, their stories, how they got here. Do you want to take us away with any invite team to start off with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just start out with, I mean, you cannot ignore them when it comes to a LAN. It's froyotech. Like, their story is actually an interesting one coming into this LAN. Of course, it's been a long time since we've seen froyotech play in an international setting. Of course, we've seen a lot of dominant performances for them in the regional scene, but it's been, it's 3 years since the last LAN. They didn't attend that LAN even though they were an existing team at the time. So it's been 4 years since we saw froyotech, and 4 years ago, they went in, I was in the game, they went to a 5th map on the grand final. But since then, they've been very dominant in NA, but they're coming into this LAN after a very curious performance in the RGL playoff LAN. Yeah, exactly. Like, they won it in the end. For anyone who doesn't track the NA scene potentially, or you just forgot this LAN happened, where were you? I don't know. But yeah, they actually dropped down into the loser side of that tournament and had to come back through the lower bracket and beat the NA version of Witness Gaming. Yeah, and they managed to do that, and they managed to look quite good in doing so. They have one player different here. They've brought Paddy in from Marmalou, who is not traveled to Europe. But just the fact that they're coming to this LAN, because this was this month. This was less than a month ago, this RGL LAN. They're coming to a LAN that soon off the back of like I said, a curious result. They won in the end, but it's strange because Witness Gaming America managed to actually thrash them on one of the maps. And I think, I'm not sure how this affects the Europeans' chances, but I think that might have, they'll be out for blood. They will want to show this was a blip. This was not our level. Our level is this. Okay, we've got Paddy coming in instead, but we can more about Paddy later. But just as a team as a whole, yeah, I think they'll have a point to prove.
Yeah, they're absolutely very much a team that gets stronger the further on into a tournament. If they're slipping in the group stage, they're going to get, taken off by the scruff of their neck and given a talking to. They're going to be absolutely sorted by the next day and come back through the lower bracket, as you said. So they are a very dangerous team with the amount of LAN experience they have as well. Many of these guys have travelled across to Europe before, whereas even on TF2 Easy and Witness, we've got some LAN debut players in the forms of Ghazi and Nubby. Witness all have been to LAN before, but they by far haven't been in the scene as long as most of these veterans over on the froyotech side. So do you think that LAN experience diff will come into play, and how much?
This is the thing. You never can know for sure because a lot of players turn up to LANs and they're just natural. Some get better, a lot just stay the same as their online performances, but a reasonable proportion come in and have dipping or divergent performances in LANs. So there's no way we can say it doesn't matter at all. But something I will say that I think would be a key element of that is, as you said, there's a few players on TF2 Easy who have no LAN experience. So yeah, Nubby, Ghazi, very interesting to see what they can do, especially Nubby with 0 ping or 5 ping. But something that's a component of that is the stage experience. When we get to the grand final, let's say hypothetically froyotech make it through and it's one of TF2 Easy or Witness Gaming who play against them in the grand final, the stage experience or the grand final experience, it's not something any of these players, with the exception of Silentes for Witness Gaming, it's not something any of these players have experienced before. And from my experience, I can say, not even just like the pressure of playing on the stage, because that's a whole thing of its own. Some people do well with it, some people not so well. But the whole process, getting on the stage, setting up your stuff quickly, getting, it's almost like a speed run, trying to get your stuff together and then get warmed up on the stage. It can be crazy at times. And just knowing, some of the kinks and quirks that you can meet as you're trying to set your stuff up on a stage, I don't know, it can make a difference, as well as also just certain things. I'll give you an example. At I-65, when we played Ascent NA in the grand final, we came from the lower bracket side, so they had the first map pick, and they first picked a map that they destroyed us on the day before. And when I saw that, I was very happy with that, because the first map of the grand final can very often be chaos. You're not used to the sound, someone's mic is not working, someone's computer is having problems. So it's like just that process of picking your best map as the chaos map, where all these different variables are suddenly thrown into the equation. I feel like you only learn. I feel like that was a mistake why I sent NA to make that the first map, and I feel like that's a lesson you only really learn by experience. And of these 3 teams, only froyotech have anything nearing that kind of experience.
Yeah, and as you said, Silentes obviously was on that LAN stage too last time. The only reigning champion we've got returning to Insomnia on Witness Gaming's side. So do you want to bring us through Witness Gaming? They've been the most dominant team over the course of the online era. They won 5 seasons since the last Insomnia, at least in some form of the team, whether they were called Witness or Ascent or whatever. It's the Papi and Tomas team, essentially.
Yeah.
What do you think of these guys?
I think honestly, full disclosure, I have seen a little bit of the behind the scenes of this team. Of course, I'm not going to be giving away incredibly sensitive information, but I have had the opportunity to kind of get to know a little bit more about what they're thinking and how they're approaching this tournament. And this is a team who is revved up for LAN. Like, I can't speak as intimately about TF2 Easy. I'm sure they are as well. But Witness, for my money, if there had been more LANs over the past 3 years, we would have seen this lineup or this core probably quite more dominant than they were. They've gone through a lot of changes over various different seasons, and it wasn't really until I-65 was confirmed, not getting COVID cancelled and all that stuff, that they really amped up how motivated they were. And I mean, we saw it in ETF World Finals. It was a clean 3-0, whereas the previous season they had gotten 3-0 themselves. And I think they're so motivated. And yeah, like I said, I think they could have had an era of dominance, more so than they have had, arguably, if we'd had more LANs and they had that motivation. Because, I mean, 7 were keen, but these guys are, these guys are incredibly motivated.
All right, so coming on to our third seed. This is our arbitrary ranking of how we think these teams are going to settle down, but I think any of these top 3 could take it. No offense to SVIFT. But TF2 Easy are, of course, the other team from Europe with seasons under their belt in the time we've been away from LAN. They've taken 3 seasons, whether they were called Nerd Rage or TF2 Easy at the time. They have clearly got a lot of experience. As you said, they won their first season of the year, season against Witness Gaming in a 3-0 fashion, back when they had Salentes on their side. What do you think of TF2 Easy? Yeah,
I mean, we can't talk about TF2 Easy without talking about Josh a little bit, because I feel like, okay, they had Salentes the season before where they managed to win. Sill's gone over to a different team now, but the reintegration of Josh into that team is a huge point for that team. I know that even while they had Sill, as good as Sill was, arguably better for some people's money, but it's give or take. I know they definitely missed Josh's presence in the team because they have a unique way of playing the game in some aspects. Some of it not very traditional for a European playstyle, some of it a little bit more so, but they do some very unique things as well, like Pyro Sniper pushes out of last and these sorts of things. And having Josh there, this presence of this main core, this IGL, I feel like it's going to be so fascinating to see, because Josh is a player that we haven't really seen at LAN before. We did see him at DreamHack DreamHack 2015, was it 2016? We saw him at one of these LANs, but we've never really seen him at an I-Series. I'm not 100% sure if he's never attended an I-Series.
I don't think he has, at least not on a team.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him at Copenhagen and a DreamHack, but
yeah,
this could very well be his first I-Series, or at least it definitely is his first one with a title contending team.
Yeah, I particularly remember that he was never that interested in I-Series in eras gone by, but now he's here, and it's going to be absolutely gripping to see what Josh can do when he's in a title contending team at a LAN, because this is a guy who's been around for years. He's been calling for playoff caliber teams in Prem. Okay, he's had some breaks, but he's been calling for these playoff caliber teams in Prem for years and years. And seeing this guy on LAN now, doing it in LAN, is going to be, I can't say exactly what's going to happen, because you never quite know, as we said before, about the whole LAN experience, especially LAN experience as a top contender. But I'm so interested to see what it's going to be like with the Josh IGL on LAN. I think it's going to be it's definitely one of the key things for me about how well TF2 Easy do. Of course, there's things like Nubby and Gazzy's LAN experience, obviously the solidity of Kunu, and if he can kind of tick over his online performances and keep that consistency. But I feel like the Josh IGL LAN top level debut is going to be a treat.
All right, and then we can finally wrap things up by talking about SVIFT, and then we'll move on to our next segments and try and get some games covered for you finally on the stream. This is definitely the underdog team of the top 4. Would you say they're a dark horse, or would you say it's hopeless? And do you think in general you have more or less underdog capability at a LAN to kind of surprise and upset people, or in an online season?
I think Going into the LAN, it's a little bit weird now because of the hiccups. You know, we've seen one game of theirs. They were only able to take one round away from Witness Gaming in their first match, but Witness Gaming could very well go on to win this tournament. So maybe never say never. Never say never is the real thing. They're definitely the underdogs. They're gonna have a tall task ahead of them. The introduction of Samsky into the roster compared to their online roster, I feel like that's a good addition. Samsky's a very experienced. We're talking about LAN experience. He's a player with a decent amount of LAN experience. He's played on good teams at LAN before. He's observed a lot of teams. I remember him being behind my teams a lot in LANs gone by. So he's a veteran player who I think can bring a lot to that team. It's going to be hard. It's going to be so hard. It will be hard for anyone that's not these three teams that we have here. Any collaboration of 6 European players playing against these 3 guys, it's going to be hard. So yeah, for Swift, it's going to be a tough one. But I mean, they took a round against Witness. They only need to do that 5 more times per map, and off they go.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard for any mix of Prem players, as you mentioned, but like these guys have only even played Div 1 last season together. Of course, they've also got Martin joining the roster, dropping out. Gregory had to drop out due to visa issues, I believe, couldn't get his passport or something like that in time. Do you think Martin is an upgrade for them? Is he an interesting player to you? Or?
I actually think Martin's a really interesting player. Okay, it's been a while now, but I remember there was a time, I mean, we're talking years ago, but there was a time when, you know, I was building teams and I was thinking of Martin. I was like, you know what, if I ever lost a medic, Martin, this upcoming Prem player back in the day, that's a guy I had my eye on at one point, and I always had a lot of respect for his skills. So I feel like I'm not absolutely familiar with who was their medic before, but Martin is a player I've often admired in the past, and I think, yeah, that's a decent upgrade as well. Like, I have to give some credit to Martin's like sort of history. He's always been a player who I feel like could have taken his game to the next level if he had been so inclined, but just for whatever reason never decided to join particular types of teams. Maybe staying within friendship circles, or I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, that's a good addition, and he definitely gives them a little bit extra going into what is a really tall task.
All right, so we'll get ready to wrap this up, but first of all, hot take on day 1, episode 1. If you had to predict right now, who's going to take this land? Who do you think is going to be winning?
Who's going to take the whole land?
Who's going to take the whole thing?
Oh man, I can't do anything but say my boys, Witness Gaming. Witness Gaming EU. I've got to stick with them. Got to stick with them.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for sticking with us throughout all of our difficulties this morning. We are going to get back to you as soon as possible with the rest of the content from Insomnia69.